what do you think has to happen right now? 145 people at least were arrested yesterday in Washington.
Well, look, yesterday was a National Day of Action, and they're responding because each and every day that we wait, another 1,000 people are deported. Every week, dozens of Americans' children are left orphaned because they lose a mom or a dad. I mean, our broken immigration system has an impact on the immigrant community each and every day. And that's why I'm heartened to hear that the president said, look, for 3 months, April, May, June, I went down to the House floor and gave speech after speech, alerting the Republican majority that if we did not act by the 4th of July, the president would. And indeed, the president said the last week of June that he was going to act. Why? Because Speaker Boehner called him up and said, we're not going to do anything. That's after the Republican majority said that they had a set of principles, said that they were ready to work, said that they were ready to move forward. I and many others worked with them and said, we understand you're the majority. Tell us the outline of the proposal, but let's get something done. They said they wanted to do it in parts. You know, they didn't want to do one bill at one time. We said, okay, let's begin on the parts. They said everybody can't be a citizen right away. We said, okay, let's see who does become a citizen and what are the steps for the others. They said, well, we can't have the Senate bill as a model. We said, well, let's create our own model and let's come up with one better. But each and every time the Republicans came up with a demand that was acquiesced to, in the end, they just simply walked away. So look, the president yesterday and I prefer a legislative solution, because what the president can do, Amy, is never going to be as great and as fulfilling and as permanent as what can be accomplished legislatively. So I want a legislative solution, but the Republicans have said they're not going to give us one. So then the president needs to act and use his executive authority to act.
And Luis Gutierrez, what do you make of the threats by some Republican leaders in the House and the Senate that if the president does act and they believe he'd be acting unconstitutionally, that they're prepared to essentially shut down the government by holding up approval of the budget that Congress must pass before the beginning of October?
Well, look, Juan, first of all, I believe the president's going to act in the next 30 days. That's my hope. What would stop him from acting? Well, probably because there's some Democrats that are in some contested senatorial races, Pryor in Arkansas and others, that don't want him to act until after the election. But I hope Democrats say, you know, we have principles, we have values, and we'll put those principles and good public policy ahead of politics. Because one of the problems Democrats have had in the past is we're for the immigrants, but we don't want to expend too much political capital in defending them or lose too many legislative seats, and certainly not our majority. So I would hope he would put good public policy ahead of politics. Having said that, look, the Republicans, let's say Obama does it, Juan, and he says it it would take 3 to 4 months from the moment he makes, right, the decision, to the time that it can be implemented. Because you've got regulations to put in place, paperwork, you got administration to put in place for millions of people to be able to apply to the American government so they'd be freed from deportation and given a work permit for a couple of years. Now, having said that, I think what we need to understand then is the Republicans can always come back to the table, which is one of the things that the president said yesterday. He said, you know, hope is eternal, spring's eternal. Maybe they'll come back in the lame duck session and we can talk again. So they can always come back. But Republicans have to stop saying, we won't do anything. There is a crisis in the immigrant community. It is a damaging, hurtful, and many times leads to deaths in our community. And so you know what? If you don't want to act and there's a crisis, we have a responsibility to use the powers that we do have at the legislative branch to help people. What can Obama do? Look, he can't do what the Senate bill would do. But what he can do is say, I want to prioritize deportations in a way that is meaningful to our national security and that respects the bonds of families and the immigrant community that have been devastated because of our broken immigration system.